Recorded at the Kitchen Studios. This is the Pencil Pushers Podcast.
Welcome, Leadheads. This is the Pencil Pushers Podcast, and I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Mike Rosato. And I'm pretty pumped. Why, you ask? Because today we present my chat with our good friend and soon-to-be yours, Lenny Terenzi. Lenny is the proud owner of Hey Monkey, a studio that services killer screen printing, illustration, and graphic design needs. But that's not all. He also managed to preside over the AIGA Raleigh chapter and raise a daughter who happens to be an incredibly talented creative in her own right. Lenny's story is so good and so inspiring that I always leave our hangs wanting to know more. This is no exception. So sit back, relax, and let's get into this. Ladies and gents, let's talk with Lenny.
Awesome. Lenny Terenzi.
Hey.
Welcome, sir. Thanks so much for being here, buddy.
Absolutely, man. It's good to be here. Good to see you again.
Man, it's been probably 3 months or so, three or 4 months.
Yeah. Because you skipped out on the conference scene with me this year, man. Come on now.
We did, but we'll be back next year. But we did go to your Thrive conference, which was amazing.
Yes, thank you. Definitely not mine.
Right.
Boy, that's a labor of love for our whole community right there.
I believe it, man. Yeah. We're actually getting a little ahead of ourselves. We'll dive into that definitely in a little bit.
We're setting the pace for this right away. Tangent. We'll just title this one Tangents.
Exactly. So for those that aren't familiar with Lenny is a definite jack of all trades, but not one of the kinds of people that are fairly good at many things and a master of none. He's actually incredibly talented in a number of fronts. So I've been watching Lenny for quite a few years. And just amazing to watch him produce as much as he does.
Keep going.
Yeah, he's just laying out the dollar bills on the table. It's really nice.
We'll get to the 20s. Start laying it out real thick.
But let's. I like to kind of start things off with a little bit of some origin stories. So where'd you grow up, and how did art become a thing for you?
Yeah, so I grew up. All right, so I grew up down here, but I was born in upstate New York, Binghamton, Endicott, Enwell. Lived there till I was 9 in that area, upstate New York. Bounced around a couple cities and moved down to North Carolina.
What's that close to, by the way?
It's right over the border of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I guess the closest thing would be like Ithaca, like Cornell. Yeah. I think Cornell's Ithaca, right? Anyway, somewhere up there. Yeah, sure. Syracuse.
Okay.
Yeah, that general area. Kingston, Woodstock. Woodstock. So,
yeah.
Art was not from my mother. And when she listens to this, she'll be like, yep. My dad and my grandmother. Grandmother on my mom's side. So She didn't pick up anything from grandma.
Yeah, skipped a generation.
Grandma would paint and draw. Dad would draw. And that's just, I don't ever remember not drawing. Mm-hmm. I get all kids draw.
Yeah.
But it was a little more intense for me.
Right.
And I just kept going.
So you remember your dad being, when you say that he used to draw, was he a guy who would sit with a sketch pad at the kitchen table and just kind of, draw portraits and stuff? Or was
No, so he would sit with the back of his leather jacket because he was in a biker gang.
Whoa.
And yeah,
damn.
Absolutely, man. He was straight up Harley guy.
Nice.
And he would, with, leather paint, draw the biker gang logos and skulls and stuff on his jacket.
That's freaking awesome.
He would custom paint Harley tanks, VW bugs, used to trick out stuff so I used to watch him do that and just thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Do you have pictures of this? You got to send this over.
They're all in my head. I could probably find. I will. I'll try to dig up some pictures of his work. But the at the table with the biker jacket's all in my head. That's really and funnily enough, that is one of my earliest memories that I can remember my grandmother's kitchen.
Yeah.
And I remember the jacket splayed out on the table. I can see it, and I can probably still smell the marinara sauce too. So it was yeah.
So it started out that way, and so you were drawing at a fairly young age, or did it start kind of picking up after 6 or 7?
I always remember drawing, but I would say something that I was intense about in terms of you always hear a lot of stories like, I didn't even know that was a career, being able to draw or whatever for a living. And like, I knew right away, like how Walt Disney movies were made.
Yeah.
Somebody sat down and drew those damn things.
Yeah, right on.
That's what I wanted to do.
You wanted to be an animator.
I did. I wanted to be an animator, having no idea what that actually was either. Like,
kindred spirits, man. Me too.
That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And probably after I moved down here, so we're talking 83, my grandmother.
Why'd you guys come down here?
The mass exodus for the Research Triangle Park, IBM.
Okay. Yeah.
My mom came down with my stepdad, who worked at IBM.
Yeah.
So we decimated all those upstate New York towns where all those little IBM plants were. And we moved down here.
Right.
And
that's what happened to them.
Exactly. Sorry, guys. That was me. Entirely me. Moved down here. And so, I didn't see family as much and stuff. But I do remember, I think it was either Christmas or a visit from Grandma. She got me the Disney Art of Animation book, like the Bible.
Yeah, that big one. Or are you talking about The Illusion of Life?
Illusion of Life. Illusion of Life. That's it. That one.
Right. Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson.
Yes. Learned about the 9 old men, learned all the stuff. And that book was just like, in my head.
Incredible book.
And I probably drew every picture in that book, in my sketchbooks.
Right.
And
plus
just,
the little flip books on the corner. Did you have that too? Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. And that's really what taught me what an actual animator was.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was just sort of hooked at that point.
Yeah, one of the cool things about that book is that it's one of those books that when you're 12 years old, just speaking from my own experience, that you can continuously come back to. Like, you don't necessarily read that book, especially when you're younger. You don't read that book from page 1 to page 7,000, nope. Right? It's a book that you just keep coming back to because of the art, or you want to learn another specific component of how that process is actually created,
honestly, I'm not sure if I've actually read.
No, I've never read the whole. No, I mean, I've read passages.
Is like the Bible. I mean, it's like War and Peace.
Yeah, you read. I definitely read the 9 old men section for sure, because it's like I want to know everything about Mark Davis, Milt Kahl, Ollie Johnston, all those guys. So so that's pretty crazy. So was there a movie that sparked this kind of love for animation, or did you kind of sitting down watching Warner Brothers cartoons?
So here we are talking 1983, right? It wasn't the best sort of time period for Disney movies, although that's when The Black Cauldron came out.
Yeah,
and as far as I'm concerned, that's one of the pinnacles of Disney, because they went dark on that one, and it was pretty cool. Yeah. So I always look back. But, I think people say that when it was like the mid-90s, but if you kind of look back, it was Dark Cauldron, The Rescuers. Like there were actually some good
Black Cauldron, there
were some good things then. It's just wasn't the Renaissance.
Yeah, there was a great Mouse Detective, and
Fox and the Hound.
Yeah, Fox and the Hound, Oliver and Company, and
But I think we were just a few years away from The Little Mermaid, and the second sort of classic period. Yeah,
it was cool too, because from that point they still had a couple of the 9 old men working at Disney.
Oh yeah,
and they had the young pioneers like Brad Bird, who did The Incredibles and Ratatouille.
Yep.
He was just a fledgling artist there. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the director.
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton was there as an animator. So they were all like, fledgling badasses who were, walking those halls and stuff, man. It was pretty incredible.
With those guys.
Yeah.
But, if there was a movie like, I can't remember who showed it to me, but I loved Pinocchio.
Yeah.
That movie was amazing, and that movie scared the shit out of me. That was just stunningly beautiful. And I remember drawing the Illusion of Life cover was the scene with Pinocchio sort of marching down his village street with Jiminy Cricket. And I remember everything in that book cover, perspective, character, movement, color, texture was on that book cover. Like, that taught me what perspective was, figuring out how to draw the streets. And we could do the whole podcast on the book.
We really could. This is like a new discovery for me, man. We could definitely do a whole podcast on that. For me, I started to really obsess over particular animators and stuff. Was that the case for you, or did you start getting into, who were your heroes, I guess, at that point?
I can't say that I actually dove in at that point to really learn who the heroes were. To me, the heroes were the actual movies.
Yeah.
So I just was sort of in awe of them. And maybe it was even to the point, kind of not realizing, even though I had the book and I knew the names and I saw the people, that it was still actually human beings who created, all those movies. But you mentioned Milt Kahl. Yeah.
Right. Unavoidable.
Yeah. Sleeping Beauty. What was his name? Irvin.
Earl. Earl. Yeah.
That his style was so far ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And Mary Blair. You know, going classic.
Yeah.
Always loved.
Yeah. So you
Mary Blair.
So you got more into. So you were really not just getting involved in being fascinated with the hand-drawn animation, but also the conceptual art, the background art, and things like that, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And really, it's funny, like, you know, in 80s, I was already dipping back into the 50s, right? That's Sleeping Beauty, like
totally.
mid-century modern.
Yeah,
and
same
it's
here.
Still my absolute favorite sort of design style art period.
Yes.
You know, for sure.
Got a couple of books to share with you.
Heavily influenced Warner Brothers, of course, because even in the like 70s and 80s, they were still showing the classic Warner Brothers, and Maurice Noble, like all the background stuff, things like that.
Yep.
Chuck Jones, you know, all the those.
Yep.
That was huge.
It was huge, yeah, and that's one of the things that I think is
shaped my sense of humor too.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, you know, for us 80s kids, I mean, we were definitely grew up. The cool thing about being an 80s kid is that you had enough kind of varying channels to see a variety of different things.
Yes.
Like, you know, you had HBO still, you had, cable, you had like
was
30,
really
40
coming
channels.
into its thing, yeah.
Exactly. So you weren't just stuck with like 3 channels, but you did have, so you had the opportunity to like get, you know, your classics of that your parents listened to, like, or watched, like the Three Stooges and Warner Brothers, Andy Griffith, all those.
Benny Hill. I dipped into the British scene on comedy as well. Benny Hill was huge for me. That was hilarious.
Yeah, definitely. So you're drawing just kind of casually, I guess, at this point. And was there a certain was there a turning point where you felt like, okay, this is potentially something that I really want to get involved with as a career?
Yeah, high school.
Okay.
So I moved down here in the 5th grade. I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
It was very different down here then.
Yeah.
And then we're not talking a long time. It's a long time ago, but we're not talking a long time ago.
Yep.
There was still, you know, I was a Yankee.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really hear that term as much. Now it definitely is a little more of a joke.
Yeah.
But when I moved down here, I was a Yankee.
Yeah.
And there was some disdain said with it even a little bit. So I definitely had a little bit of my in New York, oh yeah, well, fuck you, you know, at 10 in my head, you know, whatever 10-year-old kind of 11 says that. But like I had a little bit of that. Yeah. So when I first moved down here, my number one goal was to get the hell out of this place as fast as I could.
Right.
And I was just gunning for 18 so I could move back home to New York and, you know.
So in high school, where'd you go to school?
So I moved down here, 5th grade, despised it. Middle school, who likes middle school? Nobody. Right. Didn't like it. But I didn't like middle school so much that I was like, I just went to my mom and said, I am not going to high school with those kids. Like, let's figure this out. What options do I have? And so I went to Enloe High School, which still is a magnet program high school.
Yeah, it was a very good art school.
Yes.
Or art department.
And so I applied and, you know, had to show examples of my art. And so I had tomes of drawings, got right in, and it was just like, yes. And that is where I turned into sort of, like, you can trace me now to high school. Okay. Lenny, I felt like because it was a school of the arts, I could be myself. In between 8th grade and 9th grade and 10th grade, like, I grew the hair out. I just started becoming a little bit of who I am now. Yeah. What I did was accepted there. Like, you know, in other schools, if you were in band, you were the band geek. At Enloe, if you were in band, you were in band. So it was cool. There's musicians. Yeah. You know.
So did you do that as well? Were you in band, or
I was
did you
not. I was playing guitar, but I was not in band. But, you know, the cliques there were only by definition. You have the band kids and you had the metal kids, and, you know, and then you had the discipline. So the art kids could have metal kids and band kids, and, you know, this is like when alternative was coming out, so, you know, The Cure, REM, and all that, U2 were hitting, and that was alternative then. So, you know, it was a big mishmash, like very much melting pot in the truest sense there. Yeah. And I felt accepted, and probably when I'm looking back, sort of informs how I am today with how I deal with community and stuff too, if I really kind of like apply it then. Yeah.
What was your personality back then? Were you pretty gregarious, or were you...
Not as much as I am now, in terms of where, like, I will walk into a room full of strangers now and I'll flip them in a heartbeat. Like, I can do that. Then I needed some backup or I needed to know a few people. And then I would sort of spread out, where sort of now I feel like I can walk in and be a center if I want to. Then I would sort of walk in and maybe work my way towards the center. But Enlo helped start guiding me that way. If I had stayed, I think, in the other school, I think I'd be a completely different person. Completely different.
So then what happened after high school? So you moved, and I'm curious about this. So you moved to Rome, is that right?
Yeah,
Right after high school?
Yep.
And did you do that by yourself, or did you go with family?
No, so it was another IBN move, right? So my transition in sort of away from animator to what I would become was drawing throughout high school, art classes, art history. They called it commercial art, which was the first graphic design class, but it was still all hand-drawn art. And then in my junior year and senior year, there was a class called Graphic Arts and Printing. And it was, honest to God, graphic design class with a Mac and 4-color presses and the camera. There wasn't a scanner then. It was a camera to shoot the art. And we would expose the film. We would actually paste everything up. So, I know why that nice maroon color is the masking color in Photoshop, because I used the real damn thing. I was right at the tail end of actually using Rubylith and all that stuff, right? So I remember doing all that stuff, but the computer was there. And so I started seeing what that was. And for better or for worse, I started to abandon drawing and move to computer arts because it was like the hot new thing.
Right.
So I started, that's where the slide started.
So you started
happening.
to see a passion growing for that at that point?
I just thought it was cool that you could use a computer for that.
Yeah.
My dad being an IBM, we had computers from 80. Stepdad, I should say, actually. My mom remarried. That's what brought us down. So my stepdad, so I had computers forever. And to me, they were, gaming machines, playing Zork and all those text-based things. But this was the first time I saw them as, holy crap, you can make something with this. So that's what my pivot started to come. That would start kind of landing me literally sitting here with you today. Yes, so what brought us to North Carolina is what brought us to Rome, Italy. They were setting up a new division there, and they grabbed like 30 of the top performing managers and their families from America and said, 2 years, go over there. We're going to put together this new division. I did not want to go.
How was your Italian?
It was horrible.
Right.
Yeah, horrible. I didn't want to go. I just graduated high school. I was ready to hang out with my friends. I was ready to sort of explore what would come next.
Isn't it? I mean, you could have. I mean, you graduated high school. What was you could have said, look, I think I'm just going to stay here, work. And
I could have. I probably wasn't ready to.
Yeah.
And I think there was probably some of me that's like, well, this could be cool.
Yeah.
And my parents kind of saying, dude,
don't pass this up, right?
Yeah. Like, come on. And I went, and while I was there, like, I still wanted to come home, but I did enjoy myself there. And after about a year, I did go to my mom and say, like, this has been great. I said, but I think I want to go home. I think I do want to start just getting some independence and hang out with friends and just sort of like establishing what like adult Lenny would be.
Well, what was that like though? Before we jump into what was next for you on that, I don't want to skip that too much. What was that like for you as a fledgling creative person, being in such a historically artistic area?
It was pretty mind blowing to go to just to go to cities that are archaeological digs. Like, you go to the city, it's on the map as a city, but technically it's a dead city.
Wow.
It's not there, there's nobody living there, but it's a live archaeological dig, and you just go to it. There's no gates around it. There might be now, we're talking early 90s, so security was way laxer on everything. Mm-hmm. But you would just go and walk around this whole city, and like you would just look down in a hole, and there would be buildings under there. And if you look down there, you'd see classic Indiana Jones looking archaeologists like chipping away at stuff. So like seeing that, going to the Vatican. Mm-hmm. I'm not a religious person. It's still pretty damn cool to see like the Pope deliver a service. Yeah. And to, like, walk in and just to see what that looks like, from dress to decanters and things, like I was there and I was like, whatever, amen, all that. But I was like, oh my God, this is cool. Like, just seeing it. So I definitely was like taking that in,
from a cultural perspective.
Yeah. And just even like the things you forget, like drive around in the car and you come around the corner, it's like, holy shit, that's the Colosseum. Like, you just forget that things are there, and you see them like right in front of your face. Florence and, going to all these places.
So you did travel quite a lot outside of the city and everything.
Yeah. We went to, all the American families went to Austria one Thanksgiving. So we hopped on a train at night and woke up the next morning in Austria. It was literally like the beginning of the first Harry Potter Potter movie. You go to sleep and wake up and you're on this train and you look out the window and all of a sudden it's just snow-covered mountains with trees. And like it's really funny because when I think of that memory in my head, I actually hear music from the Harry Potter movie because it's like it's a visual that matches up so much. Again, being a visual person, so it was really cool to just be there and experience that and see that.
Yeah.
And I want to go back with my own daughter.
Yeah.
When I can.
So you weren't really doing much art there. It was more about just kind of living and experiencing.
And I would draw. I did have my sketchbooks and I did have my thing. So I would definitely draw and stuff.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like sitting out in front of, the Coliseum doing like a plein air type painting or anything like that. But I just would draw.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would still draw my cartoon characters and my Disney characters and all that. That never really left.
Yeah. So you went to tell your mom, it's time for me to head back. So you did that. And then what happened next? Did you go immediately to, I know you decided to go to art college. Is that right? Or?
That was the stipulation of you can go home, but you need some kind of school.
Right.
Something. She's like, I don't care what. I just want to know that during the day you're going to do stuff. I was like, got you. Got back. And when I got back, a friend of mine had started at this new school that was teaching design, just strictly design and like the computer programs that went with it. It's still around. It's called Living Arts College now.
Oh, yeah.
But then it was called the School of Communication Arts.
Yeah, I remember that.
I was with him in the very, very first class. It was very difficult to get into it back then. Like it was straight up portfolio reviews and
was it super like expensive too, wasn't it? Or
for then, it probably wasn't. I think it is for now. Not disparaging against them now, but
oh, they're all like that.
They've lost their way personally. All those sort of like for-profit type art schools are just not worth it for me. For what we get out of it. But I really enjoyed learning the software there, and that's really what I learned. Was about the software. I learned on Photoshop 2.0, so we didn't have layers. Like, I remember, I feel like I'm right at the cusp of being like, you kids, you don't know, you don't remember what it was like when you had to do load selection, save selection, and then load selection to move something in Photoshop.
Oh, that's awesome. And they also had a computer animation department, didn't they?
They did. I took both because I was like, animation. Right?
Look how a ball can be rolled. Yeah.
And it was 3D.
Yep.
And I was like, I was starting to find my way back to like seeing that, maybe that's still a thing. So I took the graphic design 1 and 2 class.
Okay.
And then I took their intro to computer animation class. And that's when I knew I did not want to be an animator. I was like, fuck that 3 weeks to make something move 1 inch. I was like, I don't have the patience for the actual animation, part. But I still loved the art and the craft. So that was, at least in a way, I was able to be like, okay, don't want to do that.
Right.
Be able to draw the line in the sand.
Yeah. So did you wind up going, was it like a 2-year college, right? Is that right?
I went for 2 years. So you would get, it was like
or
9-month classes where you would get certifications at the end of each one. But I ended up going about 2 years. I got 3 like certifications for it. And it was just like any kind of school. There were people there who just naturally had like a gift for design and art. I was absolutely one of them. And there were some who didn't, who learned it. And there were some who didn't, who just didn't, who even back then they thought if you knew Photoshop, you would be a designer. If you knew 3D Studio, you would be an animator. Right. It was happening then. Were
you in love with graphic design at this point or?
Yeah. That was like, this is what I wanted to do. Like I knew that's what I wanted to do at that point.
Yeah. So you left, so you leave there. And now you started working at SAS, right? Was that shortly after you finished, or was that?
It wasn't too long. It was probably maybe within a year. Okay. Which, so when you're thinking leave school, job placement, that's about a normal amount of time to sort of land something.
A pretty good spot to land too.
But I had left, not left. I had, graduated from the school, and a good buddy of mine was the placement director there. And I just went back to visit, and he had said, I was like, hey, what's going on? He's like, I got a real plum opportunity at SAS. And, SAS was the place to work. And still pretty hot now, but back then it was culture before company culture was a buzzword like it is now. And I was like, dude, put me on the list. He was like, you're a year out. I have to give it to our soon-to-be graduates first. And I was like, dude, But I understood. He goes, all right, I'm putting your name at the bottom of the list. There was like 32 names on the list. I'm putting your name at the bottom of the list. Well, they started calling from the bottom of the list. I got the first phone call. Nobody else even got a phone call.
Wow, yeah. That's amazing.
So they literally started from the bottom. Like, they called me within a day or two, and I was like, shit, y'all called like 30 people fast. And they're like, yeah, we're just grabbed the list and started from the bottom, working our way up. I was like, great. And went in, did an interview. It was just for a contract job, doing some 3D for a possible new gaming venture that they were going to do.
Right. So how familiar were you with 3D graphics at that point? Because you were pretty much going for graphic design at that point, right?
I was, but since the last class that I took and the last certification I had was 3D, you know, at that point also, like, you know, when we're kids, it was like, yeah, I'm a graphic designer. There's a job in 3D. I'm going to be a 3D animator. You know, just go where the money is just to try to get in the field.
Right.
So I went to and interviewed and showed them some of my demo reel and you know, still framework and stuff. And they were like, this stuff's really cool. And started working with them for a couple weeks on just conceptual stuff and, you know, having me out here and there. And then probably about 3 weeks after that, they called and said, as happens in corporate America still, they decided to kill the project. And I was like, crap. All right. You know, we'll keep in touch if anything else comes up. Okay. And I spent probably the next year after that, I went and got a record store job. So, we're talking like totally classic artist line of work right here. You know, well, I'm going to get my guitar and write sad songs and go work at a record store.
Right.
I was John Cusack film in the making right there. And so doing that, but once a month, I would just send my contacts there just a hello. Hey, y'all, you know, just wanted to say hi. Yeah. Not, have you got anything? Not, you know, what's going on? You know, is this going to start up again? I would just say hi.
Yeah. Soft fishing.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm not going to like bug them. Mm-hmm. Little did I know that that's like advice that I would be giving to students and people even now, especially now in the age of like, you know, networking and the way things are. And about a year later, they actually did start a full-on gaming company. And I was one of the first outside people they called to come in and get a job there. Awesome. Because they had brought me in. And he literally said throughout that whole year, number one, when we let you go, you took it graciously and blah, blah, blah. But for the next year, you just checked in and said hello, said, how you doing? You remembered things I told you. Like I would say, oh, Bob, how's the kids? You know, your daughter was going to do a voice acting thing. How did that go? And I wasn't doing it to be disingenuous. Like I was like, it was a nice guy.
How's everything going?
Let me check in, you know. Yeah. And he said, I remembered that. I was like, so when they were putting together this and they put us in a room and said, who's people you know that can do something? He's like, I just threw my hand up and I just said, this guy, but I have no idea for what yet, but we want him here. And so he said, so is there any chance that you happen to know, so, you know, we're talking a year and a half now by that call, that you know how to make websites? So just so has it that I had spent the last year and a half actually learning how to code.
You're kidding me.
I'm not even kidding you. And through the best possible way ever, I was part of a Motley Crue online fan club, and I was creating fan sites for other people and myself, and that's how I learned how to code websites.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I know how to code websites.
Yeah, check out this sweet Nikki Sixx landing page here, man.
100%, yes, yeah. And that's how I learned. And so I was able to be like, yeah, I do know how. And so I went for the interview, and I just aced it right away. And that was 1994.
Okay.
And I worked there for 6-7 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
And that was SaaS completely, or just that one, the gaming section there?
It was SaaS, but it was the division was called South Peak Interactive, but we were SaaS employees.
Yeah. How did you like that experience? Did you enjoy it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
But then you got that entrepreneurial itch and decided to go out on your own.
Yeah. So I loved it at SaaS with the gaming division. And when I started, they were pouring money into that thing like water, like anything you wanted. It's like, what do you need? I need a new computer with blah, 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 blah. 2 days later, it was there. They sent us all to E3 in like, you know, limousines, you know, and stuff like that. It was hot. It was like, you know, nice hotels, like shipping us around, doing this. We were doing games for Warner Brothers, so we were doing Men in Black. We were doing.
What specifically were you doing there? Were you still doing web design for that, or were you doing conceptual stuff?
Web design, okay. Yeah, so I would do some conceptual stuff, but mostly I was doing the web design for the games and for the company as well. And so we were working with some great properties: Warner Brothers, History Channel. Like I said, we did Men in Black, Wild Wild West. Movie games, which we all know how good movie games usually are. So just being able to like just do that, like it was, you know.
What was that process like, working in that kind of environment? I mean, it's similarly to crafting a show or a movie of some sort.
It is, because they're usually, stories based off the movie, but they're their own story. So it was...
You have concept designers, animators,
writers, and because SAS had such a huge video department, because they would do corporate video. I mean, we had full green screen, like we had an entire movie studio on site.
Yeah.
So we had a high production level. But the best thing ever, right? So this now harkens back to our talk in the 80s of being a kid. When we got the Warner Brothers license, for you to become somebody who can officially make Warner Brothers material, they tell you that you have to go to Warner Brothers University. And I was like, this sounds like the most amazing thing ever. And it is. They fly someone out, a Warner Brothers historian out for the day, where they rent a theater.
Okay.
And you sit down and they show you cartoons all fucking day.
Jeez.
And tell you stories that you would never, ever know. Like how Sylvester got his voice.
Right.
And that it was actually making fun of one of the Warner brothers.
Right.
Like he had a heavy lisp.
Right.
And they mocked him in the cartoon.
Uh-huh.
And they forgot to take the voice out before he viewed it. And so they're all watching the cartoon, and he's in his chair with the, that classic kind of, movie trope where he's in his chair with the projector behind him. All the animators are behind him. All they can see is his silhouette, and the cartoon's playing, and, he's spitting and lisping all over the place. And they're all in the background going, we're fucking fired. We're fired.
Yeah.
And the reel ends, and he's dead quiet. And then all of a sudden he just starts howling with laughter, and basically in Sylvester's voice asked the animators where the hell they got the idea to give the cat a voice like that. Like that was like, so hearing those stories
awesome.
And watching those cartoons, like that was a whole 2 days of doing that.
That's amazing.
And it's like, and you're paying me? It's like one of those moments. All good things must come to an end. The game company just, didn't work, as a lot of game companies don't. And they transferred me and a bunch of other employees over to an educational division, which I think I would love now.
Yeah.
But then it was like, ugh.
Right.
And they transferred too many of us over, and SAS doesn't, at least then it didn't lay off, right? That was like an unheard of term. They didn't want that sort of culture. So they called a bunch of us into a room and said, we're not laying you off. You can either get another job within the company, or if you would like to leave, because now it's our choice to leave, we'll give you crazy amount of severance. They'll fully vest, they'll accelerate our vesting in the company. So I left the company with $20,000 in vesting and stuff. So I was like, I'm out.
Wow.
I'm gonna try it.
And you're young at this point, getting this crazy.
When was my daughter was already born? So I was 46. I was 26 or 7.
Okay.
My daughter 7.
Yeah.
My daughter was a year old.
Yeah.
And that was part of the reason. Some people will listen to this who don't know me. A lot of people will listen to this who do know me. My daughter was born a paraplegic, so I've been in a wheelchair. So in her first year of life, lots of hospitals, lots of stuff going on. She's kicking all the ass right now.
Amazing.
Everything's great.
Yeah.
But her mom, my then wife, also worked at SAS. So I was able to leave, be with my daughter, do the appointments, stay at home, and we didn't lose any benefits.
Yeah.
We didn't lose any of the magic that SAS had.
Yeah, so it was a no-brainer.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And so that started, it wasn't Hey Monkey then, but that started.
So now you're also a fantastic guitar player. Where did that kind of come into play? Did it happen around this time where you had more freedom, where you didn't have your full-time job, or were you playing before then? Or
I was,
because you kind of went into that pretty heavy, almost full-time.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Or
I was an 80s kid, so my music was the Sunset Strip, right? I already told you I was running, so I was Motley Crue. I was all that stuff, Cinderella, all the way to Metallica, Megadeth, all that stuff. So obviously the guitar player got all the chicks.
Right.
I'm saying that because that was the term used then. Ladies, all the respect. I'm just using the term that was used in the 80s, right? That's the way, that's what I want to do. I was like, okay, I'm shit at sports, but I can play the guitar.
Yep.
That one can also get me a lady.
Right. Yeah.
So I started playing then, but I discovered in the like mid 90s, as I started at SAS, like blues and soul and like early rock and roll, that it just fit me. Like I was able to really play that right away. Like it just seemed to fit me like
Plus
glove.
all those bands back then, they were all derivative of that music anyway.
And they were. And my favorite ones, actually a lot of the ones that are still around touring were the very rock and roll blues based ones. So they were the ones who actually had the longevity, because they weren't based on a look or a style. They were actually based on a musical movement.
Totally.
So there's a lot of them that are still around. So, so diving into, out of SAS and starting my own thing, that also gave me the freedom to play music and do that. So I started, touring with, put together and touring with a local band. I did that for a decade. I mean, just those years were just a swirl of artsy things. Yeah.
So was it predominantly music and then maybe some graphic design, or how did things start kind of evolving?
I think it was predominantly music for my time, as far as time, spending time. As a musician yourself, you sure as shit know it wasn't predominantly music making my money.
Right.
That was still design. That was going to be, making the pictures.
Yeah.
But the great thing is, when we weren't a great band, because all bands kind of suck when they start and then you get good, but we looked fantastic. Great logo, great website.
Right.
And it helped. Like, it got us in the door a lot of places.
Yeah.
And getting in the door a lot meant more gigs. A gig is worth 50 rehearsals. Yep. So we got better really fast because we were just getting shoved into these situations ahead of bands that had been around 5, 6, 10 years in the area. Oh, you want to play this club? It was like, yeah. Like we didn't think we were ready for that, but so we kind of went into it that way.
So music was obviously not the main breadwinner for you. So what was the breadwinner for you in terms of the money that was actually coming in? Were you doing just a lot of freelance work at the time, or did you start pulling in clients? Or
if we're being 100% honest, the main breadwinner was my wife at that time. I mean, I was doing freelance and staying at home, but I was with Bella and playing music. So it was her, but it would still have been design.
Yeah.
And art and graphic design. And yes, clients, doing web work. Mostly web work. I wasn't really doing a lot of branding and illustration then. And even illustration wasn't really called that for doing it on the computer yet. It was still, illustration was still more paper, hand-drawn. Now we sort of can blur those lines a little bit.
When did things start picking up then? When because essentially you started, there's two main things that you're invested in right now, which is Hey Monkey and then AIGA. Which came first, and how did that all kind of become such an important part of your career?
So 2001 is when I left SAS and started going out on my own. 2010, at the time, unfortunately, Bella's mom and I divorced. Okay. And so I was, truly on my own at that point. And it was like, okay, you got to go all in. And that's when I literally started Hey Monkey. Like I called it the name, registered the business, and set my flag in the ground. I've been doing it all those years before, so I'm 19, almost 20 years, doing it. But that could be the official date of that.
And did you go immediately into doing screen printing, or was it largely design? Or
largely design. I started doing branding as well as, again, websites were still big then, so a lot of people would say website. I'd say your logo sucks. That's that was the strategy process. I need a website. Well, you also need a logo because it sucks. Okay. Right. Yeah. Now they have things like strategy and, and all that stuff that we do. Back then it was just like, God, that blows, man. Come on.
Yeah.
I miss those days sometimes, but they're better for it now with the strategy, so it's okay. So just started doing that, and started realizing that, I was sort of on my own, and that with music and with the
Which you were still doing plenty at that time, I guess.
Yeah, I was still playing music. With the way my relationship was, and it sort of had ended for the last few years, I was very much kind of like, I wasn't introverted, but I had kind of insulated myself from the outside world. I wasn't part of any kind of communities or doing anything. Honestly, at that point, I sort of didn't like design anymore. Like I was just like, well, I know how to do it, so I'll keep doing it because music sure as hell isn't going to pay the money. But I was looking around at that's when the sort of the right? The Design Famous started happening. Like Draplin was just starting to hit, and you were just hearing about these two twin sisters in California who were kind of making their name a little bit, and just hearing little like trickles of people like Draplin and the Hood sisters and people that we know and admire, so much now. And I was like looking around, going, God, these people just love this, and what are they? Like I don't, Now it's burnt out. Like I didn't know really I was burnt out then. So I kind of like took a step back and I was like, well, is there a design community? Is there a thing? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
And I looked around and saw that there was an AIGA Raleigh chapter or AIGA. I didn't know that it was like chapters and things. Looked on the website for it, and then it was like $400 a year to join. And I was like, nope. Just looked at that as a dollar figure, not so much as an investment.
Yep.
But you can still go to events. And so my first event was in 2010. I went to see Von Glitschka. Everybody, wonderful illustrator, brander, everything. He's just, and now good friend. And I went to see that event, and there was like 60 people there, and I was like, this is my people. Like, this is cool.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
Zero, nobody. But I felt an energy in that room. And so I left, and I remember watching like the people who were the board then go walking to dinner with him, and I was like, might have been cool to go hang out, but I was nobody, and I went to my thing, and then I started looking, and they have these monthly meetings, they called their community meetings, and I started dipping my toe into that realm and actually going to the meetings and seeing what the community was about. And
you call yourself an ENFPA, right? And so that's extroverted as fuck, if anybody wants to know. And that is now. I don't know if that would have been my profile. Yeah, that's actually what I was going to lead into. I'm curious as to what, because you now basically you're an arts community leader. You have put yourself out there dramatically. You are a public speaker. You are the president of the local chapter of the AIGA. Right. And what a dichotomy of watching the board walk away with the speaker, knowing they were going out to dinner and saying, well, that would have been fun. Yeah. I mean, how did you get to that point where you became so gregarious, so ready to put yourself out there? For those that don't know Lenny, my impression of you is that you're very giving. You're a very giving person. You are somebody who is very emotional, like you really care about people, and the things that you care about them deeply. Yes. Was that sort of the thing that pulled you towards wanting to get out there more? I mean, finding that when you saw that you had this great community to be a part of, obviously that probably was a fuel of some sort. Yes. So right, I went to that first event and got charged by being in the room with people. And then about, it wasn't a year later, but it was next year. I think that Von Glitschka event was like the fall. Yeah. And then I went, in 2011. So we've been talking maybe 6 months later to my first community meeting. So, where they have everybody gather to say what's going on. My very first meeting, I was walking in there, still burnt out, but in design and, but saying, okay, maybe this is what I need to energize. And I went in and I sat in the back of the room, right? Because when you go into a room for the first time full of people you don't know, you're not going to go in the front row, right? That's classic middle school survival technique. Back of the room where nobody will see me. And a couple of guys were walking around with cameras, and they walked up to me and said, hey, would you mind jumping on camera for a few minutes and answering a few questions? That's the last thing I wanted to do. I wanted to sit in the back of the room and not be seen. And so I was like, wow, this will be easy. I was like, well, no, I've never been here before. I wouldn't know what to say. There we go. Oh, it's even better. It's like, shit. All right. If I'm here to sort of step out and look at what this community is about, let's look at this as an opportunity that I wasn't expecting. And they took me in a room and said, okay, we'll set up a camera and just answer the questions. They were like, you don't even need prepping. I was like, okay. And the question was, if AIGA Raleigh was to give you a sum of money to pursue something you've always wanted to pursue, but perhaps money, time, or other resources were the issue, what would that be? And in that time, right, so I've been doing some design. I've played music, so I was touring. And with touring comes making posters and all that kind of thing. And so I would go to clubs, and I would see our poster on the wall, which was digitally printed, and then I would see these other posters. I was like, that's really fucking cool. What, I could feel the ink on it. Screen printed posters, right? And so I sat there. I was like, God, it'd be really cool
to like learn how to screen print and maybe even open like a little studio or something. And they were like, great, thanks. Turn the camera off. I went back to the meeting. And I went to a meeting here and there. I went to one, maybe skipped a month, went to another, maybe skipped 2 months. And then one night about 10:30 at night, I got an email from them and said, hey, do you remember when you answered the things and blah, 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 blah about the screen printing? I was like, yep. They're like, well, that was for a thing that we're trying to do called the Pursuit Fund, where, you know, people apply for those ideas. And maybe you just didn't see the Twitter stuff and all that. So keep in mind, I wasn't following AIGA on any channels. Like I wasn't that invested yet. Yep. And they were like, we think that's a great idea and it's different from a lot of the applicants. Would you mind applying? I was like, sure. When's the deadline? They were like, in about 90 minutes. I was like, great. So it was like in 90 minutes. Yeah. I was like, in 90 minutes, I was like writing this financial. I was like, I have no idea how much this costs. I'm just going to say $1,500. I was just like inventing shit. Like the definition of pulling something out of your ass would be a video of that happening. But I did it and sent it in. And a few days later, they're like, hey, we love your idea. We want to give you money. And I was like, wait, what? And so here I am burnt out. You know, I was getting divorced. So I was already feeling like a little less of a person at that time, you know, the whole, just that, all that dichotomy of losing, you know, a relationship of almost 20 years, you know, with Bella's mom, and just not feeling very confident in myself. And I'm like, I was like, and I literally said, I was like, you guys don't know me. They were like, well, yeah, it's a great idea. Like, it'd be cool. I was like, but you don't know me. Like, you know, I was flabbergasted that someone was going to, here's money, go learn this thing. Like, that doesn't happen, right? And they were like, all we ask is that, you know, just update us on what you did with it. You know, a blog post or come into the community meeting one time. There was no huge stipulations. They were keeping it nice and easy. And, you know, they gave me the money, and I remember being given the check, and I was like, I'm going to do a little more than a blog post. Like, this is like, you know, there's something like
incredibly giving. Yeah.
Yes. You know, and it was like, you could almost like, if you could hear like a little like dam or wall break in my head, you just heard like the, you know, something fell. And I went and I took a class in Winston-Salem and learned how to screen print, and, you know, just through work and spaces and with the help of, you know, my then girlfriend, you know, really pushing me into it and doing that, you know, just learn and created a little studio and a storage space. But at that time, then I started going to every community meeting and I started volunteering for every event. I was like, you guys gave me money, like a lot of money. Yeah. You know, maybe not a lot, but like a lot still, right? You know, because it really wasn't
especially
money.
Considering this is
they paid me confidence.
It's a nonprofit organization, right?
Exactly. So. And so I just went all in. Like from that point on, I was at every meeting. I volunteered for everything. There was one community meeting where I was on every event slide as a volunteer, and I didn't even realize it, and they didn't even realize it. And it was after that meeting, the then presidents, who were Joe Schramm and Jonathan Opp.
What year was this?
2011.
Okay.
So
not that long ago.
Yeah, 11, maybe early 12 by that point, where they actually, you know, where I was actually like full in volunteering. So 12, 14. No, 2011. They said, would you like to join our community board? I was like, ooh, what's that? And I said, well, it's, you know, we have our elected board, you know, which is the board that governs the chapter. And then we have sort of your Uber volunteers, like people who are just all in, and we just want to sort of bring you one step closer in hopes that you would like to join the board one day. Yeah. And I was like, that sounds great, right? I felt like I was finding my family and my tribe, and it was like being official.
That's a great way to pull people in, man.
I was being adopted, right? That's all the brainchild of like Matt Munoz and what that board was at that time, which would have been 2010 to 12, which is when I went to my first event, right? So I could already feel the electricity in the room of what was happening in that chapter. Yeah. But I didn't know it then, but that feeling and the way they do things, or that I should now say the way we do things, was like new then, you know? So I was sort of came up in that world with them. And so I joined the community board, and they were having a new board rollover. And 6 months later, I joined the board, and I'm now on my third board term as president. Amazing. Not third as president, but board term, and now this board term, I'm the president of the chapter, which, I mean, I would have never, ever, ever told you that.
What is that like? What's it like being the president, Mr. President?
It's a lot cooler than the one we got in the fucking White House, I can tell you that.
I think we're going to, like, in post-production, put a little round of applause during that part right there.
Yes. I didn't know how much I wanted it until I got involved in it.
Yeah.
Right. It was never something I shot for. Like, I was just like glad to be part of something.
Yeah.
I was glad to be able to give back. And to this day, I still don't feel like I've repaid that $1,500. I don't, because it's changed everything.
Yeah.
Everything. I started as the director of Uniting People. That was my first role, which is basically volunteers. And, basically I was the person they would send out into the wild to gather people and bring them back in.
Right. You were the perfect person for that.
And that's where I cut my teeth doing that. And then after that, I went they were like, okay, your next term, we want you to be vice president. And I'm like, that seems like a jump, because usually what comes after vice president. It's like, in politics, it's not necessarily that, but usually in like a board fashion, blah, 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 vice president, president.
Totally.
And I was like, oh, wow. And so I, vice president, and then I'm now in halfway through my presidency term. And it's one of the greatest things that I've ever done.
Yeah.
Like, when my term is up next July, if you ever want to see a grown man cry, come to what will be my last community meeting as president, because even just thinking about it makes me emotional. Yeah. And it's not like they put me out of pasture. It's like, well, thanks, and then bury you in a hole. I'm going to still be around and do stuff, but it has been the absolute greatest honor of my life to, when I say lead, it's not me. Yeah. I have an amazing board, an amazing community that actually leads. I'm just the guy that sort of is the stop. When a decision ultimately has to be made and 3 people can't make it, I'll be all right, this is it.
Right.
That's my leadership.
So would you say that AIGA essentially has been the most integral, the most important part of your career growth the past 10 years, more so than having your own business?
Yes. Matter of fact, I would even say of my career growth, I would say
personal growth and everything.
Aside from becoming a father, that's actually been the most important thing that's ever happened in my personal life. And that's a pretty big thing to compare it to, because that by far is, of course, the most amazing thing in my life. But for how it shaped my life, even how I am a dad, how I am as a dad, and how I'm trying to raise my daughter, who is now almost 20 and entering the creative field, despite all my warnings and misgivings. She's stubborn, damn it.
Oh, she's talented, that's why.
She's incredibly talented. It's been the greatest thing ever, and I know that I'm going to take a break after my board term, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to jump on the board again, and I'm completely fine if I go through the whole cycle again, and I would do it again.
Yeah. Getting into the weeds a little bit more on this, because I think it's incredibly important for a lot of artists who are certainly more along the lines of being introverted. What was it like evolving as a community leader, public leader, getting out there and speaking to more people? Did you have, certainly as a musician like me, being up on stage as a musician is completely different than getting up on stage and talking to somebody about a specific topic for a specific period of time.
Yes.
How did you evolve into that, and what kind of challenges did you have to overcome from your own personality?
Sure. So despite the fact that I am a musician, and I had by that point performed on hundreds of stages to crowds numbering. The biggest crowd we played was headlining a festival for 35,000 people.
Nice.
So I played in front of like
a lot of people,
Rolling Stones level size crowd at one point. So I've with a guitar on, man, I'll get out there and just middle finger, I'll Johnny Cash it.
Yeah.
Right. F you, let's windmill guitar.
Yeah.
You put me out there in front of a microphone to talk.
35 people.
Done, right? Because I didn't have the guitar to hide behind, right? I didn't have the thing.
The magic feather.
Even as a singer, right? Steven Tyler, microphone and all his scarves on it, right? He changes when you get up there. You become a character, right? And so with AIGA, there was a certain genuineness already, because the community, I was part of them, they were part of me. So I was able to speak in front of my 30 people and 40 and 50 and stuff like that. So that already was changing. I was like, well, I can do that, Part of it was knowing that I was up there, I was genuine. And everybody out there was looking at me like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about, or he's helping lead or do this thing. So we appreciate the work he's doing. So it was it was reciprocal. Like, I know I wasn't speaking to a hostile audience. I just did air quotes.
And was that super easy for you at that level?
That part was easier than expected for me. Like, I kind of felt like, and there was a little bit of like, fuck it, I got nothing to lose. Like, I was trying to change. I was trying to embrace this. Like, it was like a mission at that point.
Yep.
And as I started doing that, I started looking back at what that story was of, you know, being in this career since I was in high school, right? Of learning and design and doing this and going through a failed relationship and having a daughter with special needs and coming to sort of despise my career and then have to just embrace it because it's the only thing I really knew how to do to make money. And then through AIGA, and I was like, well, there's a story there. How would I tell that? What is that story? And I didn't really know how to do it, and I also didn't really know how to even approach it, because while I was sort of maybe becoming known around here, which that word still makes me squirm, that sort of known, like I'm, you know, but like becoming known around here on a small level, I was like, how am I ever going to get on the stage at a, you know, how conference or whatever conferences are out there? You know, I don't know those people until as I started getting involved with AIGA. I decided my next step was to actually go to a design conference. I'd never been to a design conference at that point, right? So I looked at my local community to get involved with. I was like, so what's the next step? Well, let's look at a broader one. Yeah. And so I went to Google in like 2012 and said, design conference, Southeastern United States drivable. Because at that point, I had a crippling fear of flying. So I wanted to make sure I could drive to it. And so I said, Design Creative Conference Southeast. So there's two words in there called creative and South. And that was one of the first things that came up on Google was Creative South 2013, which if people who are familiar with Creative South, that was the first year it was actually called Creative South. Okay. So the 2 years before that, or 3 years before that, it was like called Columbus Creative. This was the first year it was called Creative South. $75, 2-day conference. The lineup was Aaron Draplin, James White of Signal Noise, Mama Sauce, the Hood Sisters, Justin Mazel, Raji King, like Ryan Hamrick, Sean West, like
all-star cast.
All-star cast. $75. And I could get in my car and drive. Bought a ticket. Went down there, met the head of the conference, a guy named Mike Jones. So, you know, and I was tweeting about it on Twitter, like how excited I was to come. And he was like, oh, look forward to meeting you. Make sure you say hi to me. Went down to the conference. The opening party was on the deck outside of the hotel. That's how big the conference was at the time. Met Mike, super nice guy.
Very nice guy.
Just, you know, shook his hand, said, thanks, hey, thanks. And he was like, hey, thank you for tweeting about it and letting people know about this. And, you know, if you need anything, let me know. I was like, great. And I was there with a friend, did the conference. And right before I left the conference, I saw him again. I was like, this was amazing. I was like, I think this may have been life-changing. I don't know how yet, but I felt that feeling again that I got when I walked into that first AIGA Raleigh event. Yeah. And he said, hey, you know, drive safe home. And he goes, and let me know when you get home safely. I was like, that's a weird thing to say. I was like, all right, Grandma. You know, like Grandma would say that, right? When you're leaving Grandma's house or Mom's house. But I did. I got home and I just shouted on Twitter, Mike, thanks for everything. Home safe. And 6 months later, I had already bought tickets to Weapons of Mass Creation Fest in Cleveland. So I already knew from Creative South that I had something else to look forward to because I was like going for it. Yeah. And as we were getting close, Mike started tweeting that he was going to be there. And I was like, dude, I'm going to be there too. He's like, oh, cool. We'll see each other again. So I got up there and I got checked into my hostel. We stayed at the Cleveland hostel. Cool. And when I got there, you know, Mike had said, hey, give me a call. When you get in, you know, let's figure out where we are. Maybe we can do some dinner or something. And so I call, and I hear him answer the phone. And when I say I hear him answer the phone, I don't mean I heard him on the phone. I physically heard him answer the phone. I was like, hey, dude. He's like, hey. He's like, where are you? He's like, in my hotel. I was like, can you hear this? And he goes, yeah. I was like, dude, I'm in the room next to you. We were staying in the same place. It was me in one room, him and some friends in another room. Nice. And we proceeded to spend the next 4 days together, probably 18 hours to 19 hours a day. And one night we were walking back from the event at 2 o'clock in the morning in downtown Cleveland, and we were telling each other our stories, and they were very similar. Having a kid, divorcing, you know, first wives, and using the community like that. And I told him my whole story, and he said, so you ever told that story? Like, at a conference? He goes, this is an amazing story. And I was like, no. I was like, nobody knows who I am. I said, who the hell's going to put me on stage? And he goes, I will. You're going to speak at Creative South 2015. And this was 2013. And he was like, I'd put you on next year, but I already have somebody in your slot. So Creative South has always had sort of a, you don't know who the hell this person is, but we think they have a story slot. Yeah. And so they already had someone for 14. So he said, I'm going to give you 15. I was like, are you serious?
Did you fear that? Did you feel that ball of sweat just rolling down your forehead?
Dude, the balls just went boop. Like I had jumped in a cold lake, right? And I still had 2 years to go before I had to worry about it. And I was already freaking. I was like, are you serious? He goes, it's just that easy, man. He goes, I appreciate all the kind words you said at the conference. I appreciated you, just like everything. And he goes, and here we are 2 days into this. He goes, I literally feel like your family. And anybody who knows Mike, and Mike is family. He is now my absolute best friend in the world. He's my brother.
And a super plug for Creative South. It is an incredible conference. If you guys have not been to it, I highly recommend it for anybody who's in graphic design, graphic arts, illustration. It is an incredible community. It's usually jam-packed with incredible speakers. But in general, they really make you feel like family. And I felt that immediately the first time we went there. And it's basically comes from the top down. I mean, Mike is...
When you came, was that the year I spoke? Did you see me speak there?
It was...
You saw me speak somewhere.
I did not go to this one, so I didn't go to 2019. It was 2018 and 2017 that we went to.
Okay, you went
so
to
we
those
missed
two.
it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2015 is when I did my very first speaking event, like in front of 750 people.
Yeah. So walk me through briefly of what that felt like, finally getting to the point of doing that first talk.
I could have never imagined what it would have done, what it did for me. In that time, so I've been doing AIGA. I'd also become like a volunteer with Creative South and helping out and just becoming part of that community.
Yeah.
And when I was going to do the talk, like I was very honest about what the talk was. Like I would put on Twitter and everything, like, come see me talk. I hated my career for 17 years, and I've just reinvented myself. And, I've really pushed it like a story, and I think it got people interested. And some of this may sound like it's coming from ego, but it's coming from amazement. Like when I was there and I was getting ready to go on, like I was in the vendor hall, and the vendor hall, like people were like shutting down. I was like, what's going on? And a friend of mine said, dude, they're all shutting down because they want to come see you. And I was I was like, what? I was kind of nervous. And when I got introduced, they do the MC and they introduce, and I came out, I got a standing ovation coming out.
You hadn't even started speaking.
I hadn't even started speaking. And I came out like the guitar player, though, okay? Right. I bought this crazy-ass loud jacket. That's where that started.
Right.
And if we might have time to get into that, but if anybody who's seen me speak, they know my jackets. That's where it started. Because for speaking, that was my guitar. Let's put on just some whack-ass jacket. So when I come out, everybody's going to be like, that's cool, right? It disarms, right? It disarms. So I came out in that, and I came out, and I like threw my hands up like I was going to be like Billy Badass, not knowing that what was about to happen. I was just doing it to be like, go out there like you're the guitar player in a band.
Right.
And so I did that, and the entire place was on their feet like for 5 minutes.
Wow.
And I had no idea. I just started like going down the front, like high-fiving people like I was in a band. I was like, well, fuck it. I know how to do this.
Yeah.
Right? And I did have a lot of friends there, so they were some of the noise and holding up signs and stuff.
Well, what's your anxiety level like at 10, though, before you went
30,
out there?
So it was filmed, and I've got the film of it. And if you see me start to talk, and you look down at my right hand, man, I could have made a milkshake with that motherfucker, because it was like, brrr, like it was just buzzing, right? For about 2 minutes. And then it started calming down. I just started talking, and I just started realizing what had just happened. I was like, I don't know why, but these people want to see me, so don't be nervous.
Yeah.
But I was nervous because I was about to get out there and say I hated my career.
Yeah.
I was about to get out there and say, because I hated it, I fucked over clients sometimes. And and those aren't things that you're proud to say. And those are things that some of those clients might actually listen to, even if it's a decade later. And I even said, if any of the clients are listening to this, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I went out there and I talked about Bella. And I talked about my then girlfriend and fiance, which we could go do a whole other podcast on that. Talked about that. I just opened everything up, and I went over by 30 minutes.
Oh my God.
Very much like is about to happen here on this podcast. Sorry, Max. He said 10, but you are screwed, my friend. No. But I went over, but when I finished, I got another standing ovation. And it was deafening.
Yeah.
And I don't say that from ego. I say it from like amazement and from what that gave to me. And that moment is when I said, okay, the gloves are off. I'm not ever hiding shit anymore. There's no more of this social media. Everything's great. If I've had a bad year, a bad week, a bad day, I'm going to talk about it. Not in a look at me, I want attention.
Yeah.
Not in a, and the content I give, the talks I give, they're never about how successful I've been. Because honestly, I've failed far more than I've been a success.
Yeah.
I've barely made any money with my own business and studio.
Yeah.
So, but what I do get out there and talk is I say those things. And I say, I did all these things and they were bad.
Yeah.
Don't do them. I kind of get out there and do that. I'm a dad, lead by example, I guess.
One of the other things that I really enjoy about the design and art, I guess the design community at large that are sort of within the same realm of the Creative South populace, is when I went to Creative South, that was a big game changer for me because I realized so many of the people that went up to speak, who many of which are many of our heroes. Mm-hmm. I saw the first time I went there, I probably saw 4 speakers cry.
Yeah. That
was like a revelation to me. That's one of the beautiful things that I love about our community is that we do talk about the tough times.
Yes.
And there's a cathartic component to that I think helps everybody feel like we're all in this together.
Yep.
And that we can rise together if we actually have the humility and willingness to talk about it, right? Yep. So I definitely feel you. There's a lot of power that you can get out of that,
Yes.
Yeah, it's disarming.
And it was freeing for me. I felt like I had just dropped 20 years of stress off my life.
Yeah.
So from that day forward, and I faltered here and there, but I've realized every time I've just been brutally honest about where I am in life, the community that comes and just like, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? You've given so much. What can I do for you?
Yeah.
Right. And I still, to this day, feel like I'm paying back the $1,500 that was given to me. And I think that's how I always will.
Yeah.
That's how I always will do it. So
what's next? Because we're definitely going to have to do about maybe a part 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
What's next is I've had my studio for a few years. Hasn't gone as well as expected. I actually have started a full-time job at an agency.
You did.
And that could be a whole talk in itself. But I still feel that there's something with my studio and something to give and something that's needed. So if you go look at my Instagram story, it might not be up by the time this comes out, but maybe I'll save it as a highlight. Matter of fact, I will. I'm going to save it as a highlight so people who are listening to this can go back and see it.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm giving it I'm going to take one last swing for the fences on my studio and
while still doing the
full-time job.
Oh, okay.
I've got some ideas that I'm going to lean into some of the things that I've learned and done with my time at AIGA and just as a community member and as someone who's learned that I really enjoy teaching and mentoring and helping others. And I'm going to sort of make that the foundational crux of my 17th rebirth in the creative field and with my own studio and brand.
Now Bella actually is off to college now, is that right?
She's not in college because I kind of think right now that college is a big bunch of bullshit in the creative arts. I think they charge way too much money for a field that you are not going to make nearly that much money in for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to saddle her with that. And she's incredibly talented. And so we're just getting out there. She's a photographer. BellaTerenziphoto.com. Because, I'm a dad.
Absolutely.
She seriously is amazingly talented.
Her work is worthy to be mentioned here. Absolutely.
It's good. She's good.
Great photographer.
And so we're just getting her out shooting. We're getting her out learning. We're doing online learning. I'm taking her to conferences. She's just started a job with Alicia Colon of Thrice Studios, who is an amazing photographer, paper artist. As far as I'm concerned, one of my great friends. But to me, already a giant in the industry. And if she listens to this, she's going to cringe when I say that. But she's just a wonderful person. And she hit me up a couple weeks ago, and she goes, I think Bella would be perfect for this, and I want her on my team. What do you think? And I said, well, of course I think so, but hit her up. And so, she's starting with her.
That's awesome.
And just kind of doing the thing.
That's awesome. But I didn't mean to interject.
Yeah, so totally.
Yeah, so you get your full-time job, but now you're also trying to keep Hey Monkey moving forward.
Yes.
Does that mean hiring some others, or?
No. So what I'm looking at doing is really leaning into what have I enjoyed the most in my studio, and you've even been the recipient of that, and that is when people come in and I teach them about screen printing, or we talk about art or illustration, or I've done workshops at conferences on various things. Through all this, I've been offered teaching gigs at, or the possibility of them at Meredith, UNC, Elon. But I never went to college myself. And so without a degry, I'm not allowed to do it, which I think is bullshit. And that is not denigrating against those universities. That is just the model
standard
of it is. Yeah. I would get really excited about the thought of that, because I've spoken at a lot of colleges.
Oh, you would be phenomenal.
And sitting in front of the students, and when I talk, and then not being able to leave for 2 hours later because they all want to talk and ask questions and do stuff. And I will talk to every one of them, and I want to answer every one of them. And I love that.
Yeah.
And I've sat back and looked at my studio, and I've realized that the entire time the studio's been open, it's been a lie, right? And what I mean by that is I've been trying to sort of brand me with the studio, me as designer, illustrator, but the studio is it's a screen printing studio, and it's a cool place to be. So this, right, as a designer and someone who does brand strategy, it's like, you asshole, why didn't you do your exercises on yourself? And you would have seen this very clear.
Yeah.
People love coming to the studio, and they like talking to me and learning from me, and I enjoy doing that. So I'm going to do a very massive shift in the studio, and it's going to sort of become like Hey Monkey creative experiences and like learning. And I'm going to set it up as a classroom model and a teaching model where I can work during the day.
Only in the physical, though, right? It's not like you're not going to do online.
Eventually, I am going to be moving to online. There's a few online courses I'm working on as well.
Nice.
But I can go to work all day. And I can leave work at 4:30 for the day and pop over to my studio and do a 2-hour class.
Nice.
Not be exhausted because I'm not doing physical printing labor, but I can teach and do things and still be home in my pajamas by 8 p.m., but feeling fulfilled and doing that. So that is like the Cliff Notes version of what's happening. It is literally in progress. As of today, I was getting pictures of the studio of entire walls being torn down and out, which is both a physical and a mental metaphor for me as well.
Yeah.
So it was really exciting to see that happening. And it's the first time I've been for the last year or two that I've been truly excited about that space. I kind of have avoided it and felt like there were ghosts walking around in there for a while.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe this was the thing.
So as I know how these things work, it's usually a moving target as far as when those things are going to be completed. But we know that we can go to your social media to find out when that'll actually be ready and how people can register and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk a little bit about where they can find you for those that don't already know the infamous Lenny Terenzi.
Yeah. Infamous. Lenny Terenzi. So it's at Hey Monkey Design on everything. Instagram, Twitter, Dribble, LinkedIn. You just tag that at the end of everything. HeyMonkeyDesign.com on the web. Raleigh.aiga.org. If you can't get a hold of me, you seriously aren't trying. It's so easy to find me. And when I say that, I mean it's so easy to find me. Hit me up. Ask me a question. Get together with me. I'm not saying I'll be super fast accessible and available because I am busy, but I can assure you that I will make time for you, to talk to you, to see you, to hang out with you, and to hug you.
Awesome. Lenny,
not in an uncomfortable way.
That's right. Lenny, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming out.
It's been great.
We're going to do another one, man. Hopefully sometime before the year is out and see how things are progressing.
I'd love to, man. I'd
awesome.
love to. Thanks, guys.
All
Appreciate it, man.
All right, man. Take care.
Yeah, bud.
See ya. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Pencil Pushers Podcast. Follow us on Instagram at the Pencil Pushers Podcast for visual representation of our guest artwork, topics discussed, and anything else that contributes to the show. Be sure to subscribe. Tell a friend. Tell lots and lots of friends. Become a leadhead. And we're out.